Lunar surface or on a ground demonstration or maybe a suborbital flight. If they're successful, then our goal is to put them onto a mission and to infuse them, or to infuse them into the commercial market and let these technologies become commercial products that the whole space economy can utilize.
You now have competitions where you're inviting people to participate in this process. Tell me about these competitions that Game Changing's working
Right. Well, let me specifically talk about Honey, I Shrunk the Payload, because that's where we want to kind of talk about today. With Honey, I Shrunk the Payload, we are engaging the public. So in this particular competition, we were interested in small instruments. Our platforms for space flight have gotten smaller. The rovers are getting smaller. Even the lunar landers that are developing now for the commercial lunar payload services, those are a little bit smaller in scale than what you might be kind of used to for, like, I'd say, a human landing system or something like that. So with these smaller platforms, you need smaller instruments to put on them just because of their capabilities. And so with Honey, I Shrunk the Payload, we have asked the public to generate ideas, submit their ideas, and really see what they've got and see what's out there. So we get a lot of benefit out of that. We get to see what small instruments are out there, which ones would be useful to advance science and exploration on the lunar surface. And then hopefully we get to actually fly them.
Was there any specific guidance that you gave the participants as they worked at this competition?
Absolutely. So we knew that we wanted to engage the public with this, and we knew that we were going to have to help them. So we worked with our partners at JPL, and we came up with what we would call an interface document. We gave all the participants constraints and parameters for how they need to design their payload. So first, it has to be a certain size.
Small.
So think bar of soap. So 100 millimeters by 100 millimeters by 50 millimeters. That's the package that you have to fit inside. You have to weigh less than 400 grams. And then on average, you can only consume about 4 watts of power on average. And that's kind of the parameters that we gave them. And then the last thing was your instrument has to do something useful and interesting on the lunar surface. And it has to also be applicable to the types of challenges that NASA is facing for Artemis and for sustained presence on the lunar surface.
And it makes perfect sense, because if you are sending smaller spacecraft, then you will need these smaller instruments.
Right.
And so how do you know when you've been successful at Game Changing? When do you know that you've actually achieved your goal in delivering this technology?
So in the world of technology development, we have a numerical scale, which we call appropriately the technology readiness level. And it's a scale from 1 to 9, 1 being basically a really good idea on the back of a napkin. Okay, hey, here's a great idea.
Where all minds stop.
Yeah, right. And a lot of good ideas end. And then all the way to TRL 9, or technology readiness level 9, which means used regularly for a particular mission, available to purchase on the commercial market, and is readily accepted as this is a space flight, instrument, if we're talking TRLs for space flight. And so all of our projects are in that kind of 4 to 6 range, and it can go a little below, it can go a little above, just depending. Typically, our projects end with some type of demonstration, and that can be on the ground, in a lab, that can be on a suborbital rocket flight, it could be on a sounding rocket, it could be on a full LEO mission, it could be on the space station, and in this case, for Honey I Shrunk the Payload, we're hoping that this will be on the lunar surface demonstrated. So when those demonstrations are done, that typically gives us confidence that from a technology standpoint, that particular technology has the fit, form, and function to be useful and survive in that environment that we're going to put it in. So at that point, we would then look for infusion opportunities. We look for a mission to adopt that technology to use, or we look for a commercial partner to go and develop it further and then commercialize it.
You know, man, that was probably the best interview we have ever done, Blair. Spot on.
Yeah, very informative. But now I want to know more about Honey I Shrunk.
Uh-oh.
What? What is it? What are you doing?
I just finished shooting the first segment of our show with these way cool miniaturized versions of ourselves. I mean, look at the accuracy. I mean, I'm depicted perfectly. And you can see the detail. It's so profound.
Now, how did you do all this without using our voices?
Oh, trust me, I got that all worked out.
I don't like the way that you're handling me, Blair. I don't think you should be doing this with toys.
Oh, no, it's acceptable.
Hey, I look pretty good.
Well, I guess I look pretty good as well. Where are we at, Chris?
You're watching NASA Edge.
An inside, no outside?
Man, we don't need to do that. I've already done that. I did the first segment. It's already done.
You already interviewed Mark?
Oh, yeah, it was great. He's great.
So what action figure did you use for him?
Actually didn't use action figures, did the actual Mark.
Oh, he was one-to-one?
Yeah, one-to-one. Yeah, scale lingo. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, what kind of scale are we talking about? Are we talking about CubeSat small, or are we talking about Saturday morning cartoon shrink ray small?
It's a good point, Franklin, because I love the shrink ray idea, and that's what I thought it would be. But it turns out that they're looking about wallet size, which is kind of CubeSat size, but they're using real science and engineering to bring that technology into this new form factor for the challenge itself.
Chris Small.
Yeah, there you go, right? So I had a chance to talk to the teams about their particular payloads and how they actually managed to get it down to size. Let's check it out. Joining us now are three representatives for the finalists competing in the Honey I Shrunk the Payload Challenge. Those teams are Sunslicer, Water Snooper, and URAD. Let's talk about URAD first. Christian, can you tell us about your payload, URAD?
Sure. So URAD or MicroRad is intended to be a more compact, lower cost radiation sensor that will enable future missions to deploy radiation monitoring equipment much more broadly than has been done in the past. So the name was inspired by the radiation assessment detector that was carried on the Curiosity rover, which was used to survey the Martian radiation environment both once the rover got to the planet, but also to assess what the radiation dose would be on the journey to Mars. So sort of following on from that basic concept of being a very generic, broadly applicable radiation sensor that can tell you a lot about different types of particles and measure the energies of those particles, we decided to name our payload MicroRad, reflecting that it has as much as possible similar capabilities, but in a much smaller package.
Well, what were the challenges of taking that standard radiation detector and sort of getting it down to that very wallet-esque size payload, which you accomplished?
So there were definitely a lot of challenges, both implementation difficulties. For example, the chip shortage really caused us a few issues, but also technically as far as getting the capabilities we wanted in such a small package. But thankfully, we were able to leverage some novel technologies that really only became available in the last couple of years to do that. So that was definitely a challenge. Basically, how many new technologies we were trying to leverage and cram into such a small payload, and also do it with such a small team and on such a short schedule.
Christian, what are some of the broader uses for the technology you've developed for URAD?
So